Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera to Dr. Yusuf Adinia and all my classmates. I am SITI BAIZURA AZRIN HFT20303. For the presentation session, we from Group 18 created video about the outcomes of the coursework for HFT20303. For these tasks, we choose yours and Nestle. We are from Group 18 and have total 7 members for this assignment.
Hello, my name is Akmalina Binti Daud. My metric number is HAZURA. Financial statement analysis is the process of analyzing cash flow data from an organization to make decisions. Stakeholders use it both inside and outside of a company to determine a company's worth and performance. A prominent way for reviewing a company's financial statement is ratio analysis. By comparing line item data from a company's financial records, ratio analysis gives light on its profitability, liquidity, operational effectiveness, and solvency. Ratio analysis enables us to compare one company with another business within the same industry. The study will examine 4 forms of ratio analysis, which is liquidity ratio, activity ratio, leverage or debt ratio, and profitability ratio. The first company we choose is Nestle. Nestle has been supporting Malaysians with exceptional brands and products since 1912, while ensuring halal quality and integrity. Nestle Malaysia now has 6 plants and employs over 5,000 people across the country, manufacturing more than 500 halal certified goods. Many of the company's core brands, including ISMAIL, Maggi, KitKat, and HAZURA, has been household names in Malaysian household for future generations. The last company that we choose is YAZIZ. YAZIZ has been synonym with the food and beverage business both locally and globally since its humble start in 1901. YAZIZ has built a name for his own company as a pioneer in various fields with Atlas company inventions. In addition, YAZIZ was the first company to sell canned curry chicken to customers. YAZIZ Malaysia serves a key production hub for YAZIZ global distribution, which include Indonesia, New Zealand, Australia, and HAZURA, making it a leading food and beverage company with an international reach.
Assalamualaikum, my name is MOHAMAD AIMAN bin SUZAINAL AZIZI. My metric number is H1282246. I want to talk about trend analysis ratio. First, liquidity ratio. Liquidity ratio are financial metric that assess a company's ability to meet its short-term obligation. Current ratio in 2009 was 5.99, decreased to 5.43 in 2020. Quick ratio interpretation. The quick ratio measures a company's capacity to pay its current liability without needing to sell inventory. Quick ratio in 2019 was 5.22, decreased to 4.07. Next, working capital interpretation. Net working capital fell from RM353929 to RM306785 in Malaysia, has the lowest risk of not using percent asset as effectively as possible in 2019. Next is activity ratio. An activity ratio is a type of financial indicator that show how effective a business is using the asset on its balance sheet to produce revenue and cash. Type of ratio: total asset turnover. Interpretation: YAZIZ total asset turnover is largest in 2020 that it was in 2019. Net is receivable turnover. Interpretation: YAZIZ account receivable turnover trend is increasing, rising to 5.2830 in 2020 from 4.9278 in 2019. Net is average collection period. Interpretation: from 0.2029 in 2019 to 0.1892 in 2020. Next is leverage or debit ratio. The debit ratio is calculated by dividend a company total debit by its total asset and is expressed as a percentage. Debit ratio interpretation: debit ratio are financial measures that are crucial in determining how much debit a company has. Next is debit to equity ratio. Interpretation: the greater ratio of 16.5% indicated that yours is financing higher amount of debit. Time interest earning ratio. The graded ratio was 4.51 in 2019 compared to 4.20 in 2020. Next is profitability ratio. Profitability ratio are financial metric that measure a company's ability to generate profit and earning relative to its asset and equity. Type of ratio, return to equity. Interpretation, YOS return on equity in 2019 is more than in 2020. Return of asset. Interpretation, with 2% in 2019 and 108% in 2020 respectively. Gross profit margin. YOS had a higher gross profit margin in 2020. Rating profit margin. Interpretation, YOS has a largest operating profit margin in 2019 than in 2020 when it was only 3%. Net profit margin. Interpretation, a company potential sale and revenue are indicated by net profit margin, with 5% versus 1 to 8%. The net profit margin in 2019 was smaller than 2020.
The current ratio of YOS in Nestle 2019, for the result we can conclude that YOS is the best for 2019 in terms 5.99 and Nestle is 0.65. And quick ratio, a quick ratio of YOS is 5.22, which is higher than Nestle, which is 0.31. The quick ratio of YOS is 5.22, which is higher than Nestle, which is 0.31. And net working capital, for the result we can conclude that Nestle is the best for 2019 in terms of quick ratio, which 581.737 compared to YOS in 2019.
Comparative analysis for activity ratio of YOS 2019 and Nestle Malaysia Berhad 2019. Total asset turnover for Nestle is higher than YOS because a company total asset are more effective in generating its income. Account receivable turnover for Nestle is higher than YOS because a company shows the effectiveness of account receivable to generate revenue. The average collection period for YOS is higher than Nestle because the company has a problem with collecting debts. Inventory turnover for YOS is lower than Nestle because the inventory is moving slowly and drying up capital. Fixed asset turnover for YOS ZAIN is lower than Nestle because corporation may imply that too much capital is locked up in fixed asset.
Hi, Assalamualaikum and have a good day. My name is AIMAN bin MOHAMAD SALIKHIN. My metric number is H21A2762. Today, I will present about the leverage or debt ratio between YOS company and Nestle company in 2019. Firstly, there have been three types of ratio, which is debt ratio, debt to equity ratio, and time interest earn ratio. For the debt ratio, the YOS company has shown the result of 40%. Meanwhile, for the Nestle company has shown the result 59% in 2019. Next, for the debt to equity ratio, YOS company has shown the percentage of 90%. Meanwhile, for the Nestle company in 2019, it has shown the result 142%. The greater ratio of these two company is Nestle, which is it has shown the result of 142%. Next, for the time interest earn ratio, the YOS company has shown the result, which is 1,485%, and for the Nestle company in 2019 has shown the result of 2013%. By this data, we can know the higher ratio is the Nestle.
Return to equity, which this year of Nestle it showed that Nestle had a higher ratio in 2019, indicating a stronger return to shareholder company. Return on asset, YOS had a greater ratio in 2019 than Nestle, which is YOS 0.03 and Nestle 0.01. Gross profit margin, in comparison to YOS, Nestle had a greater ratio in 2019, indicating a better contribution margin. Year's operating profit margin is 0.071, Nestle is 0.17. In comparison to years, Nestle had a higher ratio in 2019. And net profit margin, in comparison to years, Nestle had a lower ratio indicating a bigger income to shareholder. Return to equity, which this year of Nestle is show that Nestle had a higher ratio in 2019, indicating a stronger return to shareholder company. My name is SITI Binti and my metric number is HFT20303. Comparative analysis of YAZIZ and Nestle. The liquidity ratios, the type of ratio is current ratios. For the result, we can conclude that YAZIZ is the best for 2020 in terms which 5.43, and quick ratio of YAZIZ is the higher of than Nestle, which is 0.27. And the last one is net working capital. For the result, we can conclude that Nestle is the best for 2020 in terms of quick ratio.
My name is MUIZZ bin MOHD. Number matric is H2182738. Comparative analysis for activity ratio of YOS 2020 and Nestle Malaysia Berhad 2020. Total asset turnover for Nestle is higher than YOS because a company total assets are more effective in generating its income. Account receivable turnover for Nestle is higher than YOS because a company shows the effectiveness of account receivable to generate revenue. The average collection period for YOS is higher than Nestle because the company has a problem with collecting debts. Inventory turnover for YOS is lower than Nestle because the inventory is moving slowly and trying up capital. Fixed asset turnover for YOS range is lower than Nestle because a corporation may apply that too much capital is locked up its fixed asset.
The leverage or debt ratio in 2020. For the debt ratio for YOS company in 2020, it has shown the result about 14%, and for the Nestle company in 2020 has shown the result 81%. Next, debt to equity ratio. The company of YOS in 2020 has shown the result about 19%, and for the Nestle company in 2020 has shown the result of 114%. The greater ratio of 40 and 14% indicate that the Nestle is facing higher amount of debt. Okay, the next ratio is time interest earn ratio. For the YOS company in 2020, it has shown the result 170%. Meanwhile, for the Nestle company, has shown the result 62%. The higher ratio indicate that Nestle can meet loan requirement and low risk of default.
Profitability ratings. Return to equity, which analysis of years, both the years had a higher ratios in 2020. Return on asset, years had a greater ratio in 2020 than Nestle, which is 6.08, which is Nestle 0.01. The gross profit margin, in comparison to years, Nestle had a greater ratio in 2020, which is years is 0.28, Nestle 0.320. Years operating profit margin is 0.03, while Nestle is 0.114. Comparison to years, Nestle had a higher ratio in 2020. And net profit margin, in comparison to years, Nestle had a lower ratio, which is years 1.29, while Nestle is 0.01.
Overall analysis. Nowadays, many Malaysian consumers make instant drink for their daily use. Therefore, there are many brands that sell products like this. Among them, Industry Yos and Nestle Malaysia Berhad are two companies that are increasing in this country. Because of that, as can be seen in the ratio analysis, trend analysis, and corporate analysis. The current ratio of Industry Yos in 2019 is very high compared to Nestle Malaysia Berhad. It has decreased from 2019 to 2020. At the same time, Nestle quiet ratio from 2019 to 2020 has also increased. The net working capital of Industry Yos increased in 2020, while the net working capital of Nestle Malaysia Berhad decreased from 2019 to 2020. Therefore, the net working capital value of Industry Yos is better than that of Nestle Malaysia Berhad, where the volume was very high but decreased in 2020. The total asset turnover of industry YOS increased from 2019 to 2020 at a slight rate, while the total asset turnover of Nestlé Malaysia Berhad also decreased from 2019 to 2020. However, the total asset turnover of Nestlé is higher than in 2019 compared to YOS, but it increased at a higher rate in 2020.
For conclude all the assignment, overall, it showed that the financial study had different industry, yours and Nestle Malaysia Berhad being performed. Yours industry saw gains in liquidity, net working capital, profit ratio, return on asset, and net profit margin, but saw declines in profit to equity and gross profit margin, while maintaining stability in its debt ratio and liquidity ratios. However, Nestle Malaysia Berhad perform was mixed. I think that's all for this presentation. Thank you for listening.